Hello everyone, Ceri the Crafter here, that's C-E-R-I the Crafter, and I'm here with a request based on one of the comments I got from a previous video. So let's put that to one side a second. So, was it a few weeks ago? It might even have been last week, can't quite remember. I showed on my journal making for beginners how I gutted a book, and this was the very book I gutted. Now, in the comments, someone mentioned that in the video I said I turn the book pages into bases, or I use my glue book pages to create bases, and said, can I actually show what I mean by that? So in this video, hopefully it's not going to be a repetitive, boring video. I don't aim it to be that way, but I'm going to share with you what I would do. Now, we're talking about these sort of pages, which are quite modern. I'm not talking about these sort of pages, which are pretty much vintage, old and weathered. These I would use for collage pieces. I'd use them for other stuff, basically. I'd use these in my journaling because I love the coloration. So we're not talking about these sort of pages. We're talking about these. So let me just tear out a few of these. Now, some of the things we're going to be making, excuse the noise, will only be possible with pages of a certain size, and where that's possible or where that's required, I will kind of mention it to you as we go along. So let's put that up there. So let's see, I need something to glue on. Right, let's get, I've got a clean mat over here. 1 second. There you go, that'll give me something to glue on so I don't get my mat messy. So I tend to make them into bases, and then the bases become something else. So one of the most useful things I do is, now I use a Pritt stick. It's completely up to you. You could also be doing this with a glue book pages. So just know that this can be done in several different ways. So I tend to use a good coating of glue. Why does this glue feel like it's running out? Typical. Start a video and it runs out. Right. I do have another. Goodness, I don't know what I'd do if I ever ran out of glue stick. So I'm just going to put a goodly coating on here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the different ways I glue and fold things together. And then I'm going to cut them into the bases I use. I don't intend decorating any in this video because that's not what this video is about. So basically, first one I want to do is I want to make a tag. So I've got this. I'm just going to fold it in half. Now, if you're someone who sews, I'm going to use a credit card or a door key to spread these out. If you are someone who sews, then you may not need to glue these as much as I do because, of course, you can sew them afterwards. So that's the first one. I'm going to take another one. As I said, I'm hoping this doesn't become a boring video. Not my intention. So yes, as you have heard, this is from someone in the comments asking. Actually, I think there's more than one someone in the comments. I always try to answer my comments. Well, no, I always do answer my comments. Just maybe not immediately because life is busy, as it is for all of us. So sometimes I'll get the answers on the comments, but it may be a few days. It could even be a week, depends on where I am and what I'm doing. So this one, I'm going to fold this in half. Fold it in thirds this way, and then I'm going to fold it one more third over. I don't mind that it's not absolutely equidistant on the back because I would normally back whatever I'm doing anyway, which we'll talk about when I get that far. Right, that's that one done. Just need to get a bit of a wet cloth on here so I don't have a massive build-up of glue and then everything starts sticking to it. Right, so that's tag. Now, I'm going to take this and go do the same again. This is something I would do if I was alone in my craft cave. Well, I'm always alone in my craft cave. I would actually probably have a YouTube on that I'm watching of someone else, or a movie or a TV series or something. And this is what I would just call mindless prep work. So I would sit down or stand up with a pile of glue pages or old book pages like these are, and I would just work my way through systematically doing it. It's a good thing to do when you're just not in the mood to do anything else. So right, we'll talk about this one in a moment. Lift that off there. Right, do I need another one of those? I do need another one of those. as I said, this is the boring bit of this video. Once this is done, then it should speed up. So hopefully you're all doing okay. We're now in February. Where the heck did January go? I don't know. I've got a horrible feeling this year's going to go even quicker for me than last year went. But it feels like the world is kind of back to a new normal. Life has started going into hyperspeed, as always. But that's a good thing. I can rest when I'm dead. So, right, fold this one in half as well. Let's lift that one up. Let's get the sticky off this mat again. So yes, we're in the throes of winter here in the UK. Well, here in Wales anyway. No, in the UK, I think in general. We have had snow. We've got some pretty horrendous ice happening, which is never fun to drive or walk in. That's one thing that really worries me, is falling over. I don't know why, probably because if I broke an arm, I broke a hand, that would not be a good thing, would it? I would not be able to do what I'm doing. Mind you, luckily enough, I'm ambidextrous, but it would still be a bit of a challenge, let's put it this way. So, right, the last one I'm going to do slightly differently. It isn't going to need to be glued the same as it was before, but slightly differently, and it'll make sense when I tell you what it is, what it will become. So just get this glued down. Now, as I said, if you're sewing around the edges of things, you wouldn't need to glue as much as I'm actually gluing on these. And I'm only using a Pritt stick because it's not a hugely wet glue. If a glue is really, really wet, it makes the pages soggy, and there lies a whole pile of frustration with ripples in your paper and stuff like that. So I folded this in half. I'm now going to fold it in half again. So some of you out there will already know where I'm going with this, because you follow me and you know it's one of the things I like to make. So, I'm way sticky at this point. All right, so let's fold that over. And that, I believe, is the end of the gluing for this moment. I mean, I will back one or two things for you to see how I back them. However, am I going to do that just now? No, because I think we've heard enough of the glue stick tapping on the surface. Just need to clear that off there. Sorry, I know this isn't incredibly interesting, but it's part of the process. And as you know, I like to keep things real on this channel. So, right, that's gone. I don't need this one, so I'll put that up the top. Let's give my fingers a bit of a clean off, would be a good idea. So let's work our way back through some of the stuff we've got here. So these are the pieces I've actually turned into something, and I'll explain them as we go along. So this was the first one we made. So I would expect to back all of these. Okay, just so you're aware, I would back them. So let's talk about this. So I've got a card back here, a tag back. I would make that the back to fit this, or I would just cut this down to size. So that's easy enough done. So let's pull out my guillotine, because you know I'm not a trimmer person. So I'm just going to pull this in, cut it down the side, just because I want to make sure it's right. Now, this book is, wow, 9 inches tall. Let's make a 6-inch tag. So, right. So I've got my tag. This is the tag base. What I want to do now is I'm going to cut the corners. If I'm going to back this, which, as I said, I would back this with maybe file folder or maybe a bit of spare cardstock, this is the point at which I would back it. But I'm not going to put you through all the gluing again. Now I'm going to use my little gadget. This is the gadget I use to cut corners on tags. I have got a video on how I made this. I will put it in that corner in the description box. Look at the gravy, or there may be a see more or read more. Look at that, and that's where I did it. So I'm just going to line this up on the edges, come in with the scissors and just snip this off. Snip this off. Now the reason I like to use book pages for this, besides the fact that I'm recycling them, is that means I've already got interest on there. So whatever I put on here, whether it's collage, whether it's paint, whether it's ink, I have something in the background. I'm not dealing with the blank page. Right, the small bit I took off, I'm just going to just snip the corners off this, and let's just call this a small journal card. Okay, anything like this is fine. I could even cut that down the middle. Actually, why don't we do that? I just thought of something different, something that was unplanned. There you go. Something I don't normally do, but we'll have a look, see how wide this is. Let's make it a divisible one. So if I come in and, sorry, having a bit of a debate. So if I make that 2.5. Now, of course, everything I'm doing here will be dependent, which makes that 1.25, will be dependent on the size of your book pages. So, right. There you go, they're the same size. So put the guillotine down. So basically what I've done here is I've made 2 little tickets. So again, I could put inks on this, I could put paints on this, I could collage onto this, I could put, say, a piece of plain paper in the middle and stamp onto it, anything like that, and there you go. So I've now got 2 ticket bases. Luckily enough, one is plain, one is not plain, but that's another thing, and that all came off that one folded page. Right, let's look at the next one. Right, this triple fold one, this is the one that I intended to use this for, because as you can see, it's exactly the same size. So if you do have tag bases already done, all I would say is stick this on and then trim off the edges. So I'm going to come in through here. I'm going to eyeball this one, get the big boy scissors out. Cut that down. Snip. Snip. Now I am going to glue this one on to its backing just so you can see a couple of things that I would like to point out. So let's just pull in some paper. So on this one I've got the seam and that's my front. This is the bit I would stick to my backing. So what I would do is I'd take my glue stick. A lot of the time I do sew my tags. So again, if you're not sewing them, add a goodly amount of glue stick. If you are sewing them, just put a bit in the middle and sew around the edges. So I've got my backing here. I don't want that bit stuck to it. Pop that on there. Make sure it's slid into place so it's in the right position. Just smooth it down. This is an old Oyster card. It's just a card that I've used. And I'm going to come in and just take off the excess here. And then this is robust enough. Now there's a bit of an overlap here. So I'm just going to trim that down. That was gluing and folding error on my behalf, not the tag. So there you go. I now have a tag that I can grungy up, I can do stuff with, I can collage on. And this one's ready to go because when you look at book page, it's not that sturdy. Mind you, there are some journals that if you're doing a stuffed journal to sell or to give someone, maybe this is the right thickness, because if you collaged on the front of this, you would need writing on the back, but I wouldn't have used something like file folder. I would have just used a piece of coffee dyed paper. So that's another way that I would have done it. Let's put this to one side, clear the stuff out of the way, put that over there. Now, the next one I'm going to come to is a journal card. Now, as far as journal cards go, the size or the dimensions are normally dictated by my page width, which is normally about 5.5 to 6 inches using an A4 fold. But what I want to do first of all is I want to come in and I just want to trim off the rough edge there, and then I'm going to measure this. So that's actually almost 5.5. Now, if my page is 5.5, I want a bit of wiggle room. So I think I'm going to take this down to 5 inches, which for me works. Actually, I'm going to trim that end again, because what I'm trying to do is get relatively even spacing. Now, my page height when I do an A4 fold is actually 8.5 inches. So if I do this, this is going to be 4.25, which is half the page. For me, that's a little bit too tall. I do have options. I could glue this over, so therefore I would have a toughened top edge, which I do quite often do. Or with this one, I'm just going to come in, I'm going to take this down to a 4-inch Sorry, I've got my measurements mixed up. I thought I was doing a journal card. I'm actually doing a pocket. So, bear with me. So, Ceri had a senior moment. So, if my page is 6 inches wide, actually, let's use this. Okay, I know these are the right dimensions of my pages because it's a folded A4. So, I've cut the pocket so that it's narrower than my page and no more than half the height, because otherwise I'm going to end up with stuff stuck in the top and it's going to be so far up. Now, as I said, the option is I actually just cut that across the top. You could fold the top edge over and glue it down before you attach this to a page, which would enhance the integrity of that top edge. Once I've got this done, now I'm going to be cutting something that's wet, so I expect this to go wrong. And it did go wrong. There you go. Let's take that out of there. At least it gives me an idea. I would always leave my pockets till they're completely dry before I tried using my punch on them, for that very reason. Because if you've got wet glue in there, it's going to be a problem. So that would give me my pocket. Okay? Now, I don't normally back my pockets. A double fold of paper is enough for me. I could use 2 double folds of paper, as in glue another one to that if I want it more substantial. So that would be the pocket I've done. Right, now let's do the journal card that I was supposed to be doing, should we? So now a journal card is dictated by its use. Okay, so I'm going to make a large journal card out of this, and all I'm going to do is I like to come in and just tidy up any edges. I know the top and bottom edges are going to be correct, and this would be a journal card which I would then take a piece of card and I would back this with it. Like this one is almost exactly the right size. I would just trim that off. This would then give me a journal card base. Okay, then we've got that one which we'll get to. The other thing I do as far as things like this too is I will turn these into postcards. So if I've got a postcard back here. So if this wasn't going to be a journal card, it was going to be a postcard. Now for me a postcard is, and just double check because I don't want to lie to you, because that's not my ilk. A postcard for me is 5.5 inches, which I think is 14.5 millimeters, if this is centimeters, and it's 4 1/8, I believe, which is 10.5 centimeters that way. That's just the standard size that I use. Okay, there are different sizes for postcards, I fully understand that. So this could potentially almost go on there. Right, let's do a game plan 2. Right, so that's our journal card. Let's take a couple of extra book pages. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come in and I'm going to put glue in an area that is equivalent to that. So just because I want a little bit of robustness to the paper. Oh, this glue stick's really peculiar today. I don't know if it's affected by the weather or something. So I would take my 2 book pages, stick them together just to make them a little bit more robust. I would then take my postcard. This would be the postcard back. Now, when I normally do postcards, I normally put the backing on at the very end because I can be very messy when it comes to paints and inks and texture pastes and stuff like that. But we'll make up one at the moment just so you can see what it would look like, because there are a couple of things to bear in mind. So let's take that off there. Come on, out you come. So now, when I'm looking at this, I want to make sure that my postcard actually lines up with one of those edges, or if it's the right, actually, funnily enough, that's exactly the right width. That's fine. Let's just do it this way. So, give that a big press down. So that's a good point. If you're making something with the intention of a use, like, say I'm going to make a postcard, you need to measure your pages first to make sure you don't waste your time doing postcard backs and your page is too narrow for it. This one is just about perfect. So let's get this in, so you can see that you can quite easily build up quite a stash of stuff that you're using. I can't quite see because the camera's in the way. So hopefully I've done that right. Just trim these out. Now the joy, as I said, of having text in the background means that you've already got interest on the piece that you're creating. So that should just be there. So, right, so just in doing that, I've now created a postcard back. So, as I said, I'd come in, I could do collage, I could do inks, I could do acrylic paints, I could do watercolours. This is something I might sew around, because I've just realised that that's not fully glued down, is it, because we didn't glue all the way. But it's easily remedied. Just making sure I have done that, because I'll probably use this one in the future and go, why isn't it all stuck all the way around? It's because Ceri didn't bother doing it because he thought he was doing something different. Let's turn that over, it's going to annoy me. So if you were sewing, of course, you wouldn't need to do what I've just done there. So there you go. So we now have a postcard base done. We also have this done, which means that I've now got another piece that can be used for something else. So I've got an idea of what I want to do with that. So put those over there because they're beginning to really annoy me. Let's just glue these two halves together. So once you start doing this, it's amazing how fast you'll go through your glue pages. It's amazing how fast you'll use up stuff and actually end up with usable stuff in your stash instead of just a pile of book pages. So I'm going to fold that one over. Give it a bit of a press down. I do feel it's beneficial using a card or something to smooth them down. It just makes it more, sorry, not more, makes it less full of air bubbles if you've trapped air bubbles in, or sometimes with a glue stick you will get a lump of glue. So I'm just doing this because this is the one, of course, I didn't glue all of the sides together. Where are we up to? There you go. So everything is repairable, and that's what I've just done there. So right, I'll put this one to one side because I don't need to duplicate something. That's just for me to work on later. Right, and then we're down to the very last one here. Now this one I'm going to turn into an ATC, or an artist trading card. Artist trading cards are a specific size as far as I know. I always make my artist trading cards 3.5 inches by 2.5 inches. So you need to make sure that your book page is at least 5 inches wide, because it's going to be folded to 2.5, and it needs to be at least 7 inches tall, because it's going to have to be 3.5 inches tall. So I'm going to use, I've already got a back. This is a bit of scrap card. I was obviously doodling on that one. So I'm just going to come in, I'm going to put my back on here, and then I'm going to cut around it, because I know the back is exactly the right size that I want. However, you could make them and not back them. I'll show you an example of that in a moment. Let's take that out of there. There's a big old glob of glue there. Oh, I've got glue absolutely everywhere at the moment. Right, I like that. It's a more interesting front. So I'm going to come in, I'm just going to line that up on there. And I'll cut around that one in a second. Just going to let it dry for a little millisecond. However, this is an example. Okay, these are them just without backing on. These are just books from, I think it was an encyclopedia. And I will just keep these in with my blank ATC artist trading card backs. And then once they're done, I mean, I can use these on my gel plate. If I've got spare paint, I could smear it on here. I could use rice paper, I could collage, any technique I want on here. And then I would just back them at the end of the day. So that's how I would turn them into that size. Let's just get that big boy scissors out again. Okay, come in and just trim off the edges. Now, by folding it into 4, it is quite a robust book page. However, I always back them just so that they're neat and they're ready to go. And it does mean, because I number and date and sign the back of my artist trading cards, and that's how I do it. So let's have a little bit of a quick review. And and go through these. Sorry about the muddle up in the middle. I had a senior moment, as I said. So, right, let's have a little look at where we got to. So, fold the book pages in half and then cut them into a large tag. No, wait, let's start that one again, shall we? So, fold the book page into thirds. Sorry, it's one of those days, isn't it? I can't speak today. And then stick it to a back, and then I've got a nice tag background. You will find that the wrinkles will normally even out as things dry because obviously you've made paper wet. I would then go ahead and decorate that. This is a book page that was just folded directly in half. I cut the tag shape at the top. I would back this one also. This was the pocket I made. So I find that the pockets are sturdy enough when it's folded in half, but that will actually be determined by your own choice of paper. If you want it more robust, do 2 book pages stuck back together. It's cheaper to use the book pages than it is to back it with card. These were offcuts of one of the tags, so I made some tickets from them. This was a large journal card. Again, I would back a journal card, so this would either have coffee dyed paper on it if I wanted it to be a little less bulky. If I didn't mind the bulk, I would go ahead and put full file folder on the back. And when I say file folder, guys, I mean like this is an offcut of a manila file folder. That's what I'm talking about. This isn't very sturdy either, but when you put the 2 of them together, it's sturdy enough without adding a whole pile of bulk. We created a postcard back, so this again I would keep to one side. If I was painting or stenciling or inking, I would use that and make that. And then last but no means least, this is my artist trading card back or my ATC, and again I would build on these and build on these and build on these and take them all the way through, but it's good it's got detail in the background. So hopefully that was helpful. Hopefully that answered that subscriber's comment. That's just some of the stuff I do with these guys. I do a lot more than this with book pages. I collage with them. I do everything with them. If I'm building, say, a fairy house, I'll take old book pages, I'll soak them in water, I'll squeeze out the excess, I'll mix it with white PVA glue, and then I will sculpt with it and make rocks and stuff like that. So there's a lot you can do with book pages. So think before you throw them out or you put them into your own recycling bin. So I think that's enough from me at the moment. So I'm Ceri Crafter, and I'm waving goodbye to you now. So that's Ceri the Crafter. Until next time. Bye-bye now.